All right, so our recording has started, so I'll go ahead and kick us off again. If you just joined us, we're encouraging you in the comments to please put your name, your company name, as well as your industry. That would be helpful to us. We might be able to thread in some conversations that are relevant, and you can see each other because part of the whole reason that we're doing this is to help North Carolina companies connect with one another. So good morning. I am Melissa McGurk, one of the international trade managers at the Economic Development Partnership of North Carolina, otherwise known as EDPNC. Welcome to this month's Export Coffee Talk. I will provide just a brief overview of EDPNC's export-related services. I'll touch on some housekeeping notes, and then we'll dive into today's topic, key tips for developing an export plan, but also including some supply chain strategies. So those of you that aren't familiar with our organization, EDPNC is a public-private partnership charged with North Carolina's economic development growth. Our functions include business development and recruitment to bring new businesses into the state of North Carolina. We support existing industries. We are heavily involved with our tourism promotion for the state. We provide small business startup support, and then, of course, international trade resources. If you are not familiar with our international trade team, our goal is to help you to reach and succeed in foreign markets. We offer a combination of free services to include consultations with our foreign offices, as well as free educational webinars. We also have a grant program that's designed to help ease the financial lift of reaching foreign markets. You can refer to our website to find your industry representative's contact information if you would like more information about our offerings. And we are kind of charged by industry. So my industries as a trade manager for North Carolina are mostly biotechnology, medical, as well as chemicals, plastics, and rubber. If any of our other trade managers are on the call, I did see Blake, can you chime in just to introduce yourself and let everyone know what industries you cover?
Yeah, happy to do so. Good morning, everybody. Name's Blake Jackman. I'm one of the international trade managers at EDPNC. I cover an array of different industries, being a few in the transportation industries, aerospace, automotive, and the boating and marine industry on the civilian side. I also cover construction, industrial machinery, environmental technology, energy, both clean and dirty, wastewater and recycling, outdoor recreational equipment. And I know I'm missing a couple more, but
just a few things, right, Blake?
Just a few things, exactly. Yeah, I cover a whole bunch of different industries, but always happy to help out any company and point you in the right direction. If it's not my industry, we can get you in touch with the commercial service, with SBTDC, with other organizations here in the state that can help provide some good resources and knowledge for you. So happy to help any way I can.
Great, thanks. Hey, Cheryl's on the call. Cheryl, would you mind quickly introducing yourself? It'll be nice for people to see who you are.
Sure. Cheryl Morrow. I'm the North Carolina STEP Grant Program Manager. If you're interested in obtaining information about the STEP Grant, your first point of contact will be your International Trade Manager, but they'll then let me know to send you an application, and we'll work through the process. We are in the process of applying for our next round of funding, so fingers crossed we'll be able to do this again come late September.
Thank you, Cheryl. All right, so now back to the coffee talk. We have two main goals with this series. First, we want to bring you information about various aspects of your export journey by inviting experienced professionals to offer their expertise. Second, we want to give you the opportunity to have dialogue with these experts as well as with other North Carolina companies by creating a very open format, encouraging questions and discussions. So peer-to-peer dialogue is highly encouraged, whether you choose to do that via the chat, raising your hand, or using just the comments. Please feel free to engage. Again, just a reminder, this is being recorded. And I'm going to introduce our lead speaker today. So Mike Siebert is the Director of Statewide Services and Programs for the Small Business and Technology Development Center, or SBTDC, here in North Carolina. They provide free counseling services to small and mid-sized businesses in North Carolina to help them develop international strategic plans, advice on global business management, global marketing, supply chain management, and trade finance. So Mike, I will turn it over to you and let you add more information about SBTDC if you would like, and to get us kicked off for the day. Thank you.
Thank you, Melissa. It's good to be here today. I am going to enjoy today. I hope all of you are as well. I would like for you to just imagine that we're all in a coffee shop. Actually, we're calling this coffee talk. If you have a coffee like me, please enjoy it today. I have with me three, I call them colleagues. These are three individuals that I've had an opportunity to get to know better, work with, learn a lot from. And as they chime in on this topic today, in their first talk, if you will, or first moment where they speak, they'll talk about their role and responsibility for the business they work with, so that you can get a sense of their perspective around this topic. Amber, Joshua, and Gautam today. So thank you all for being here today. Just a couple other things. The topic is export business planning or export planning, but we recognize that many of you are involved in global business, both exporting and importing. Some of us call importing supply chain, right? And sourcing goods and such. And many businesses we work with here in North Carolina import and use those imports to rework and produce things and then export. So while the topic is stated as export, we won't relegate our conversations today exclusively to export, because there are some interesting aspects as well on the supply chain or import side. And we have some direct experience with that in our panelists today. So let me get started with just a brief review of this topic to kind of stage our panelists and tease out what their experience, insight, and wisdom. So Kelly, that first slide, if you don't mind. Great. All right. So the conditions needed before a company can best achieve global success, right? Assuming that they have identified opportunity markets for their products or services. So what do? All right, next slide. So we tend to look at this in terms of 4 conditions, right? Just generally speaking, and you can ask yourself this, is self-assessment, if you will. And these are attributes that we see nationally. I work with colleagues across the United States and actually internationally, and we work with small and mid-sized businesses, me exclusively in North Carolina, but my colleagues across the United States. And we tend to agree that what we see in successful international business clients, small and mid-sized businesses, are these 4 attributes. Number 1, there has to be management commitment, because it does take more of a long-term approach if you're going to be a proactive exporter as opposed to a reactive exporter. Number 2, in-depth experience with products or services that you make and deliver, so that you've had an opportunity to refine your product, refine your sales channels, work through how you do that, whether it's a distribution channel, agents, etc. And the third is adequate cash flow. And that adequate cash flow can be generated internally in how you manage your working capital accounts and how you conduct business. So it's not just external, but it's internal. And then also external, looking at debt finance and equity injection and things of that nature, and strategic partnerships. And the fourth is always a challenge, but that's the capacity and capability to produce international products or provide that service. So you can just ask yourself those questions and kind of size yourself up and your business model with respect to those 4 attributes that we see tend to be in common with those successful exporters nationally in the United States. Next slide. So this whole business of a business plan, right? So what are the reasons why we may want to have a business plan? And I'll say right off the bat, whether it's written and formal or not. It builds consensus, adds a variety of perspectives, and ensures company-wide commitment and support, right? So you can communicate, so you're all on the same page, gets back to that management commitment. If you do have a written document, in some ways that's easier to communicate because you can reference it, refer to it, cut out bits and pieces and use them as you need. It avoids missing critical steps as a company grows internationally. It identifies responsibilities, and it provides a basis for evaluation and future improvement, right? Plan, do, check, and act. So with all of that staging our panelists, I'd like to move to the last slide. And great, the last slide. This is the slide that we want to use for our conversation today. What I'm going to do is work through these key components of an international business plan or planning and tease out the thoughts and ideas, comments of our panelists. So for my panelists, and you can chime in as you want on this first kind of key component, corporate international SWOT. That's a big chunk right there. Strengths, weaknesses, opportunities, threats. So would any of you like to start off and remember to introduce yourself and a little bit about your business and your role, and then maybe take a stab at how do you see that corporate international SWOT happening in your business?
So I can jump in here first. My name is Gautam Venkat. Thanks so much for the introduction, Mike. I'm corporate controller here at Spencer Health Solutions, manufacturer of a non-invasive medical device and also provider of cloud services, software as a service in various markets. When I think about the SWOT, I think you always start with the opportunity. In the simple case, it's really, is the juice worth the squeeze, right? For what I'm going to go and get, is there enough profit there to justify the investment? More often than not, none of these are kind of a one-shot deal. No one wants to just buy a bunch of product from you and give you millions of dollars and all this margin and then see you walk away. It's really about everything, not just with the sale, but sort of post-sale. How do they trust your product? How are you going to convince that customer that you are a worthy business partner and you're going to stand behind the service and everything else? So you start with that kind of top line revenue, and in my mind, full disclosure, I come from more of the accounting finance world. So I start with the P&L, right? So I start with what does the revenue look like, and then how do we factor in the costs? And that's really where it gets interesting as far as what are all the things we need to do versus what do we need them to do in order to be successful in that market. Another big piece there within that SWOT analysis of strengths and weaknesses is what's the competitive pressure there? Am I sort of a one-off where I can charge maybe a higher premium, but I have to be that much more on point with convincing the customer that there's a need here? Or am I one of many? I'm sort of fighting and a little bit more price sensitive, and I know that I'm going to have to sort of bend to the customer's whims a little bit more. Those all kind of factor in. And I think the biggest thing is the SWOT here is really like the same SWOT you do in the US or anywhere else. The question you're asking is, you have a domestic market, you have established markets, why am I making that leap to go overseas? So, a lot of this feels to me like bridging, because we know how we do it today. We've got processes today, legal, all these things, supply chain excellence here in their current process. What do I need to change incrementally in order to do this overseas? And you kind of try to rinse, lather, repeat with any market you're entering. How do I do that in such a way that I can scale? And that, I think, is the constant question, is global scaling. How do we do more of the same?
Terrific. That was very good. I picked up a couple things there. I'd like to go to either Amber or Joshua. Do you have any perspective on how that international SWOT plays out from your perspective?
Hey, good morning. I'm Joshua Nelson. I'm the supply chain manager at Protochips. We introduce machine vision learning into in situ microscopy and electron microscopes. We're here in Morrisville, and I've worked here about 5 years. And before that, I was in the automotive industry for more than that. In the supply chain side, so it reads a little bit differently in the sense that managing your supply chain in the domestic side of the market, you don't get to see your weaknesses internationally until you begin to introduce your products or begin to do your imports. And so you tend to start, kind of like Gotham said, a little bit slow. You introduce what you're going to do, and you find a good partner, or you find an aid in doing that, and you learn, the PDCA methodology, right? You go through it, you get your feedback loop, and you pay attention really closely to anything that is off plan and begin to investigate and make improvements. Don't ever think that the plan is set in stone on day one, or that because the first decision was made, you can't unmake it and restart that introduction with your supply chain. The other part that's really stressful is you tend to think about that first sale. You've got to continue to service that customer. And so that can change a lot about how you think about your products.
Good insight there. Thank you, Josha. So Amber, I'm going to give you an option. You can be the third perspective on this topic, or if you choose, we can move to the key component number 2 on the list, product selection. And I know that in your role, you're more of what I'll call supply chain, but I'm sure you have some processes for, what is it that you need? And then is there, how do you make your choices? How do you select what you're going to outsource and import? So you have your choice. You can have the SWOT or the product selection.
And
Yeah.
I'm gonna chime in. Amber, can you just do a quick intro so everyone knows who you are?
Yeah, I'm Amber Leonard. I am the International Wholesale Logistics Manager for Direct Distributors. We import products from all over the world. We're the parent company for AgriSupply. So we're in agricultural, farm, shop, and home products. For the product selection, I would say the biggest thing that our purchasing department does is they look at what's going on in the market. What do farmers need? What are the big sellers for people who have small farms, just the home farms? They look at, what's going on, what is selling large, and they use their sources overseas to make those products and bring them in at quality. That's the key thing there, is making sure it's quality products at good prices.
So if I may, just a follow-up question with you, Amber. So, and we don't have to get in, you don't have to answer this in any detail, but when your sources of products that you're importing, that let's say for supply chain, are there a variety of different sources? For example, do you have some situations where you're basically a buyer for someone that's producing something that you want, versus maybe you have some relationships or you've made investments in some manufacturing for some things that maybe there's an OEM, for example, that you've partnered with internationally. So do you want to tackle that a little bit? The variety
Yeah, sure.
of sources? Yeah.
Yeah, we do supply to OEMs through our wholesale division, and they will come to us and say, hey, we're looking for this particular widget. Then we will go overseas to the companies that we purchase from and find the best prices, who can make it. Is it better to have it made in China versus India versus Brazil? And that all comes down to, what are the duties? What are the tariffs? Can we utilize a trade agreement? Things like that.
Right. Thanks for bringing up those tariffs and trade agreements too. They're a big part of international business. I see Josha smiling.
Could someone dive in just a little bit on that? What you mean about considering trade agreements, so everyone can get a sense?
Sure. There are, I don't even know how many trade agreements now with the US. We mostly do importing, but with the trade agreements, they have there are special rules there, like you can bring in products from, for instance, right now we're bringing in products from El Salvador. So we're able to utilize the trade agreement with El Salvador, and there's several other countries on that trade agreement where it comes in duty free. That helps us keep our prices low for our customers. We could purchase it from somewhere else, and there are some products that we do, similar products that we buy from other countries, like China, where we're paying, you know, a huge duty on, plus the 301 tariffs, that's another 25%. So we started sourcing from El Salvador so that we could keep those prices low for our retail customers.
Yep.
On the outbound side, that's similarly true, right? Your domestic customers aren't really considering that, but that can be an important part of their buy decision as well. I think to the Korea free trade agreement, when I consider challenges to ensuring your product adheres to that agreement, and that when you're preparing your product, it aligns to what they're going to need to support their paperwork. And so that might require adaptation, or it could require something else.
Yeah, good point. A lot of taking advantage of just USMCA, right? Canada, Mexico, US allows us to import, export goods without those added tariffs, as an example. So I want to move on to the second key component. And then after that second key component, Melissa, maybe we'll go to that first poll question and get some feedback from our participants today. So the second key component is product selection. So Gautam, do you have any thoughts about, what goes into decisions you make about product or service selection?
Yeah, so for us, we're pretty simple. We're kind of a startup environment here. We've got one main product, which is a medication dispenser, essentially, kind of sits tabletop. But the complexity associated with getting the medication actually into that dispenser is where we have the biggest issues. So what happens is we have to integrate our software as well as the actual packaging of the medication that goes into the refill with particular packagers in various markets. So we look at a market like, let's say, the Netherlands, and there's a home care organization there that says, hey, we'd love to use you guys. Come on, we've got 200 patients. And okay, great. Well, how many of them are using the packagers with which we're compliant? And they say, well, 15% of them. Suddenly it's a very different conversation, but the answer is never no in that scenario. It's what is it going to cost for us to open up that particular avenue? And is it kind of worth the squeeze? And so we end up prioritizing and reprioritizing over and over again. What do we need to do from a software development side? What do we need to do from a hardware development side? Are we doing it fast enough? Is it worth going and grabbing outside consulting resources to help us work on the sensing technology or other technology that we may need to make sure we can efficiently deliver the medication to the individual? So we run into a lot of, kind of the FDA equivalent overseas. In Europe, you've got the MDR, Organization for Medical Devices. So we run into a lot of those kind of issues. We have to tie it in also with what we call a quality management system. So anybody who's kind of on the product side knows the difficulty of managing a bill of materials. You have to track that BOM. You've got to track changes to the BOM. You've got to do all these things to make sure you're prepared in case something goes wrong, and you've got to kind of do a recall. So from our perspective, it's really, once you identify the market, it comes down to, it's never like, hey, this is going to work for China. This is going to work for Netherlands. It's going to be, what about for that customer? We need to get all the way down to the very last operational element, and then work backwards from there to see how does it scale with our process. So it's, in a way, it's sort of the anathema to scaling, because I got to get very micro specific customization when I'm sort of at the leading edge trying to build the market. And then hopefully if you get it right, then suddenly everybody's coming to the market, you're building demand, and people are trying to standardize on what you have. But there is a little bit of tail chasing that happens here. You're kind of trying to find, how do I kind of find the niche where I can make customers happen?
Okay, very good, a lot in that answer and response. Thank you, Gautam. I want to go to Josha, and I'll just kind of bring this back to where all of these are components of business planning, and Josha and I are like-minded when it comes to business planning. I think we pay a lot more attention to how we're implementing business plan in our daily thoughts and activities, more so than a formal written document. Part of the reason is it seems like as soon as the ink's dry, it's out of date. So it's a pretty dynamic world when you're doing business internationally. But Josha, with that, tying it back into the business plan and all of that being said, what about you and prototypes with product selection or adaptation, maybe, right?
No, absolutely. I mean, it's something that I think even building on what Gautam said in terms of knowing that specific customer. Like we talk about it, they're in China. To be clear, they're a customer in China, right? There's someone who's going to purchase it, and you have to identify who that first person you think is, because your marketing and the way you package your products and all of those things need to build into that first customer or that first group of customers really well. And then you'll learn something, and you'll try to grow that market. And what we had talked about in kind of our conversations before, Mike, was this really interesting dynamic of, and it's going to change, right? Who your first customer is not your 50th customer, is not your next 1,000 customers, or however big that market space is. And that plan you have is going to change every evolution. Some of those are because you have to change. An example would be the business partner or the trading partner you selected or are working with moved, separated from you for some reason, or you're contemplating new partners in different territories or something. And that becomes that big opportunity to redo this analysis, even if it's on the fly or specific to a single market or making a specific change. I think that's an important attribute of that business plan, is don't put it in stone, don't walk away from it, incorporate it into the way you do work, and do it again.
It is definitely, it sounds chaotic to a lot, I imagine, but it is kind of building the plane as you fly it, it seems, right? In some cases. So I think this is a great opportunity. Melissa, would you, we'd like to do a poll, and I don't know, Melissa, would you mind walking through that poll, or I can do it, however you want to do it?
Yep. So Kelly just brought it up for us. So we want to make sure that you all aren't falling asleep because you haven't had your second cup of coffee yet. So just if you could look at the question, what does your international engagement look like to date? And make a selection for the poll. It will help the panel to continue the dialogue on that particular subject. And Mike, go ahead.
Yeah, these polls usually don't take long. We can about 15 seconds, giving folks the time to answer. I imagine Kelly can get a read if we get a fair share of our attendees today to answer. Whenever you're ready, Kelly, and you think you've got enough information. Okay, great. So let's look at this. So what does your international engagement look like to date? Little to none as of now. That's about three out of 10 of us on the line today. That's great for those that are kicking the tires on international business. Established partnerships with customers and vendors. That's the majority of people here today. So this is really terrific. And then another 20% have set up overseas legal entities and or bank accounts. So that we would call that foreign direct investment. So that's pretty significant. And have international sites owned by the company, 10%. I'd have to say, so 70% of us, 7 out of 10 of us on the call today are already engaged in international business, global business. So we have a pretty savvy, Melissa, I'd say you have a pretty savvy audience here today. That's pretty interesting. All right, thank you for that. So let's go on to the next key component, and looking at the clock, we may not go hit all of these, so I may skip one if there's one that looks more appealing, but let's kind of stick with foreign market selection, and our panelists have touched on that a bit. So the whole question of which foreign, what are the factors you consider when you are in the process of foreign market selection and targeting countries or regions? So maybe I pick back up with Josha and then maybe go to Amber and then Caltham for that one.
Yeah, so at this point in our company, we have a lot of markets already supported by us, and in most cases we use a direct sales team and then partners to extend our ability within those countries. So a new market is a big investment for us, right? It means either one of our existing sales personnel are going to have to travel to yet a larger region, or we're going to have to invest in new personnel there. In many cases, we chase a little bit. So there's some OEMs for the microscope our customers utilize that might consider our products as part of that purchase. And so we get to enter a market indirectly as part of the sale of someone else's equipment. And so that can be an advantage to have. Alternatively, it's what we talk about here, right? Getting an initial engagement, maybe taking advantage of a trade show or an international introduction, and do your TAM and your SAM and decide, is there a market there? Is there going to be customers? Did I get some leads right off the bat? And then as those start to mature, make a decision, or is that really going to be something we'll invest in?
A lot of thought goes into this international business game, doesn't it? Yeah, and I'm glad that you mentioned trade shows. I know Blake is probably smiling when he hears that, and the STEP grant is a great, and Melissa and our EDPNC team can speak more of that, but that's been I've seen over the last 5 years or so, the STEP grant has just created so many opportunities for our North Carolina businesses to take advantage of trade shows and generate business. So Amber, that you touched on this a little bit earlier, but when you're looking at sourcing, are there particular approaches that you take when you look at foreign markets or targeted countries that you want to source from?
Absolutely. Sourcing is key for us. China and India are huge markets because we're importers. So China and India are huge markets for us. We were, like I said before, we're always looking for quality products. So, but we also want to have low production costs, and those countries help us do that. Got to be aware of the cultural differences that come along with that. Also for the sourcing side, you need to utilize your resources. EDPNC, SBTDC, the NC World Trade Organizations, they've all been really helpful for us navigating the world of global trade, webinars, conferences. They really help us reach out and find suppliers that can provide products for us.
Yeah, I imagine that keeps you busy too.
Yeah.
So I'd like to move to this, where some of these things sound redundant, but they're slightly different. So we're talking about entry mode and partner selection now. And sometimes foreign markets and partners are going hand in glove. But let me kind of drill down to just maybe partner entry mode. And entry mode, are you going to go kind of indirect, direct, foreign direct investment, partner selection? Are you going to have distributors, agents, all that kind of stuff? Let me circle back to Caltham, and what are your thoughts and ideas about that?
Yeah, this is huge. I mean, this is to echo kind of the comments from Josha, particularly in terms of finding partners. I mean, this is really where you kind of make the bread and butter, right? In terms of making your life easier. If you are a product company, then at the end of the day, having to build out a full sales infrastructure, sales hierarchy, servicing hierarchy is not in your best interest when going into these new markets, especially initially. If you're trying to really dip your toe in the water, you need to first of all get good legal counsel here starting in the US with a good international lawyer. And EDPNC and SBTDC have been very helpful in terms of providing some of those names to us. You need that lawyer to then connect you to the proper resources in the local market. So you need somebody over there as well who's very well versed and embedded. And that can either be a legal counsel or it could be the partner who is proven, recommended to you through your network, not just somebody randomly off of the internet, somebody recommended to you who does what you need them to do in that market. It doesn't have to be exactly the same. Like we're a novel product, but there are other parties that deal with patients in these markets. There are other parties that deal with medical equipment in these markets. So our ideal customer can also be a partner to some extent. It varies business to business, but you need to find someone with whom the thing is, managing a partner is in some ways more difficult than doing it internally because they're going to have different motivations and incentives from what you are. They're not your same team. At the end of the day, if the market goes south and there are payables to be made or money to be sent one way or the other, you have to, take a leap of faith on some level that they're going to pay you back or that your contract is going to obligate them to pay you back or your insurance is going to cover you. So all of that ties together. As you start selecting a partner, you already should be thinking about what are the key terms, right? You need to have that memorandum of understanding or whatever those key terms are laid out in a way that both parties are really on the same page. And then all the legal and other forces come together to make sure you're putting together a contract that mitigates against your risk, both in that market as well as back here at home. So ideal partner, I think, again, indirect is sort of the next natural step for most companies, just because usually the market is not automatically wide open to you.
I wanted to chime in if I could, Mike.
Yeah.
And just to make sure, there's a lot of information to absorb. So I just wanted to ensure that people know, don't fret if this is a lot of information to take on. So both our organization, EDPNC, and Mike's organization, SBTDC, are here to support you through this journey. So if you have can't write fast enough to take the notes, just reach out to us. And just quick plugs for a couple of things. For foreign market selection, as well as partner selection, keep in mind, EDPNC, we have free resources where we have consultants in 6 different foreign offices that can help you with those efforts. SBTDC has this really cool, again, free offering where they do trade mapping. They can help you ascertain where those best fits are in the global marketplace for your particular product. So I just wanted to chime in and say that those couple of things. So go ahead, Mike. Sorry for the interruption.
That's an important part, and we'll provide this information to you. Most of you are familiar with the NC export team, so EDPNC is our state's, is the place for. Particularly if you want to do trade shows, STEP grant. Also part of your state resources include the SBTDC, and we have 4 global business professionals scattered around the state. We also are part of North Carolina Department of Agriculture. Agriculture's #1 export in North Carolina, U.S. Commercial Service, Small Business Administration, their international trade loans, and Ex-Im Bank, just to mention a few, and the North Carolina District Export Council. So with all that being said, I want to get maybe another poll. Well, let me do one more thing. Let me go to Josha, and maybe he had a couple things to follow up on what Gautam said about entry mode partner selection, and then maybe we go to another poll. How does that sound?
Yeah, sure. I mean, on the entry mode side, like I kind of talked to earlier,
right,
there might be opportunities to chase an entry, right, through an indirect relationship. When you're talking about deciding to be the exporter into a market and beginning to introduce your products with a sales team and things like that, choosing a partner that balances well with you, right? So on our side, most of our partners have matured with us. So in most cases for us, we used like a direct sales team, and our trading partners manage the business side of that work. We're slowly transitioning that and beginning to put sales pressure onto those groups to carry our message for us, because you can't scale with 6 salespeople across an entire globe. And so now we're making that transition and deciding which markets do we have enough strength of partnership in to let them begin to carry our sales message for us, versus waiting for the next trip by the guy based in the UK or whatever. And that's again in that constant conversation we have there, Mike, on this is a living and breathing activity. You
Right.
always want to be considering how you're going to grow even the existing markets, and re-enter it with a new game plan.
Right.
And
I see that trend in all of you, in all of our panelists today. It's very interesting when I listen to them, and I listen to their colleagues and peers nationally. I have a great opportunity to hear how we're doing this in all 50 states, and there just seems to be a kind of a progression. At some point, our panelists and their businesses make a decision where they want to get closer to their customer. And by that, I mean moving more from an indirect to a direct model to some sort of a foreign direct investment where they have boots on the ground. It could just be a sales office in a country. But and the closer you get to your customer, the better feedback you get from your customer about your products and services, what's working, what's not working. And you just see this kind of evolution of growth of our mid-sized companies, small and mid-sized companies with respect to their savvy. So let's go to a poll and see what our registrants have to say. All right, so does North Carolina present any advantage to you regarding international growth? This is not a trick question. So Kelly, when you feel like you've had enough respondents, you're free to share those results with us.
And people can type in if you have any details in the to expand on in the chat. Also, if you're replying with some details in the chat, since we're getting short on time, if you look at those next 3 bullets, if you could type in which of those topics you are most interested in, that could help Mike to decide how to utilize our time.
Yeah. Thank you, Melissa. And also, Melissa, this goes without saying, but please chime in. We're imagining that we're actually in a coffee shop having this conversation and having some fun with it. But these are, I'm very impressed with all of you that are dialed in here today. It's quite a savvy group of global business professionals. So almost, just south of 60% of us do feel that the state provides a good environment for international growth. And, there are about 42% of us that are on the fence with that, but that's okay. Fortunately, no one's really felt that they haven't had any, advantages from North Carolina in terms of growth currently. So that's pretty impressive. So maybe we summarize. So let's taking kind of a page from Melissa's book here. These last 3 points: international marketing plan, sales and expense forecast, timeline, responsibilities, evaluation. Let's kind of lump those together. I want to go maybe to Amber. If you look at those last 3 bullets, Amber, from your point of view and your role and responsibility and what you've seen, is there anything in those 3 bullets that particularly resonates with you that you want to talk about?
Logistically speaking, I would probably say timeline.
Yeah.
Because there are a lot of factors in place when it comes to meeting lead times and seeing your production schedules. As an importer, again, because we don't do a lot of export, we have to take into account things that are going on overseas holidays. You know, you have Chinese New Year, you have Diwali, you have the Italians shut down for a whole month in August, and all of these things come into play when you're trying to get products in, or even if you're exporting, it would also affect your ETAs on in foreign countries as well. So that's something you really have to be knowledgeable of and put into account.
That's a great point. Very good point. I see Josha. Let's go to Josha and then Gautam to talk about, take a shot at any of those three, Josha, and then Gautam, I'll let you be the cleanup hitter. How about that?
So having similar background to Amber, I'm in kind of that third bullet point there, right? Of on the export side, it can be really stressful normally selling. And then why is my communication taking so long? Why is my feedback loop not working the way it does here domestically? And having that knowledge of that new market or the market that you're growing in can be really important. And again, if that's a direct boots on the ground or using your trading partner or whoever that conduit is for knowledge of the market, that can be important for expectation setting for your customers, especially. The last thing you want to do is domestically promise something that your international team overseas can't provide them. There might be a lot more roadblocks for them than what you see as your pallet leaves the dock. And so it's making sure that when you do that evaluation, it's not just the inside point of view, but also the one that you're getting from the group overseas.
Yeah, it's a lot. I know Gautam's going to clean up for us here, but for me, I had done so much domestic business, cut my teeth on domestic business, and really thought I was accomplished. And then about 15 years ago, I was introduced to global business and started to get into it. And I realized everything I didn't know. But my point is, if you really want to be challenged, if you really want to challenge yourself, and if you really want to be, when you say I'm competitive, be able to say I'm competitive beyond our borders, then global business, international business is just real exciting. And it's just, I would really never want to just go back to just domestic US business. It's just too exciting and interesting to ignore the other 95% of the consumer base. But anyway, Gautam, with that kind of teeing it up for you, what are your thoughts about any of those last three bullets?
Yeah, so my first thought that comes to mind as I think about plans, forecasts, and timelines is I think recency bias, right? And sort of your comfort level with what you know today. Typically, if someone says, hey, go roll out a P&L, roll out a timeline, what do? They take the existing one that worked last time here when we were expanding into Wisconsin, and they say, well, let me see if I can apply it to going to the country of Georgia, not the state of Georgia. So in doing that, take that model, immediately, whatever you have, double, if not triple the expense in there, and at least double the timeline as you put in there. Because it's going to be the one thing. It'll be you not being able to speak to the customs person in some particular jurisdiction. It'll be you running into a tax issue. It'll be some kind of hiccup in the supply chain. You didn't know China was going to take twice as long to produce product because of some sort of international slowdown that will always blow up your plan. And the most important there, coming back to one of the original slides, is like, are you going to have the cash, liquidity, everything you need in order to make this a success? At least to conduct this short-term experiment to see if you want to do more here. So that for me is the biggest thing. We tend to think, even if you're going to use an indirect partner overseas, that, oh, they're just going to go and do it. No, you're going to need to manage it just as much as you manage yourself, right? It's like having a direct report. It's not like the work suddenly gets done magically and you never have to look at it. No, now you're responsible for things that are not in your direct wheelhouse, and you're going to have to keep an eye on that just the same. So you have to take it seriously. You can't just assume that this is going to be a quick win. Oh, we'll flip the switch and money's just going to start pouring in from international bank accounts because people love our product. So I think just bringing that element of reality to it, bringing the focus to it, assigning, you said responsibilities on the slide. That's very important. Assign the internal resource, and you can't let go of that resource. That resource has to know you're going to be reporting on this for the course of the project. Because at the end of the day, something's going to drop. Hey, why isn't that happening? Why is blah, blah, blah not taking place? And everyone's going to do this because you had a meeting with 15 people and nobody actually said, I'm taking that. So walk out of your meeting with a responsibility with your partner on the other side in the overseas market. Make sure they are available. They have to be responsive, whether that be through a simple phone call or being able to get in a video chat, whatever it is. You've got to have multiple ways to jump over these communications hurdles, because an email is going to go and sit in somebody's inbox and they're never going to see it. They're just as busy as you are, right? So have those things in mind before you start committing product and investment dollars and other dollars overseas. That you've got to watch your dollars, and the biggest thing is the communication with the partner. The biggest thing, the second biggest thing, I think, is that timeline, and can you afford what you're doing for this period of time? So,
Thanks.
Melissa, I'm going to turn it over to you if it's all right.
Yeah. So a couple things to say. So I also, we're getting short on time. I have a follow-up comment for the conversation that was just happening. Then we'll let Mike do a quick wrap up and offer some Q&A time. We will respect the fact that it's almost 11 o'clock. So those people that need to drop, including panelists, if you have other things going on, drop. But perhaps we can offer an extension for 5 to 10 minutes to engage on Q&As. So just to jump back in on my piggyback, can you all actually comment on the reward? So I love the reality check that was given, and that we really do need to, prepare for the long haul. But can you, give a sense of what's your general timeline of expectation of going through kind of the hurdles and overcoming, just to get that initial kind of reward that kind of keeps you going, because there are challenges. So let's speak to the rewards so we end on a happy note. And then Mike, I'll have you lead some Q&A.
Uh-oh. No. For our business, so at Protochips, we're now about 70% of our revenue comes from overseas markets, from exports. We continue to mature that market because we know how important it is to our growth overall. And we're beginning to feel the pressure of competition. I mean, we were a novel product 10 years ago, and we're beginning to feel that. But that means you're doing something really good. And so that's an excellent carrot to continue to improve what you're doing, to keep that #1 spot in the globe.
Thanks. I would love everyone to take a turn at the positive rewards for all this hard work.
I don't want to, Amber, you haven't had a chance to speak in a little bit. I'll jump in after you.
Rewards. It's nice when we start carrying a new product and it sells really well, and I don't have any customs issues with it coming in. That's always very nice.
Good. Yeah, I think happy customers, right? I mean, like wherever, either if you're in Amber's situation, you're bringing in product that your customers locally can really use and they can benefit from, right? Or, our situation is a little bit more of, we're trying to export to companies for whom our product resonates. So it's kind of cool to see that your product can have influence on somebody so far away. And, one of the reasons I like kind of the healthcare space, the medical space, is you're improving people's lives, right? So there's something there that's benefiting people. Wow, you're touching people that aren't in your local market, that are hundreds of thousands of miles away. And, it just kind of validates you and makes you see that there's just a level of, I hate to say cachet or whatever it is, or status, but certainly there's just a feeling of pride you have of like, hey, I'm serving people around the world and they're all benefiting from our product. So it's just very validating to everything that you do.
Great, thank you. So it is almost 11 o'clock. So those people that need to drop off the call, I want to thank you for joining us. Next month's talk, we're going to be tackling the big topic of international intellectual property management. And Blake is going to be leading that from the EDPNC side. So please do join us. I see we also have Kuldeep, our team member, who's on the call now representing some other industries. But I would like to offer some Q&A for those that have the availability to stay on a little longer. So Mike, I'll let you lead that. Yeah, go ahead, Blake.
Right before everybody jumps off, I'd like to talk about one event that's coming up. It's the North Carolina World Trade Association's annual conference. If you're not aware, then the North Carolina World Trade Association has, Mike, correct me, am I wrong? Is it 4 chapters now, or are we still at, we're at 4 chapters now, Charlotte, Triad, Triangle, and Wilmington area, the Southeast. A lot of opportunities for networking events and different speaking engagements and ways to be able to get in front of the global professionals within the community, the international business community here. At the annual conference, it begins May 1st through May 2nd, downtown Raleigh at the AC Hotel, or is it North Hills, Mike? I think it's North Hills.
It's Raleigh. It's downtown Raleigh.
Yep. Downtown Raleigh, May 1st, the evening starting at 5 p.m. It's a great opportunity for companies to be able to get a better understanding of the North Carolina World Trade Association, to be able to network in person, face-to-face with other like-minded individuals that are in the global space. So check out the website, ncworldtrade.org, and click on events, and it's a second event down below. But look into signing up and becoming a member. It's a great opportunity. Like I said earlier, we have 4 different chapters around the state, and it's other professionals like you all, and then resources available from law firms, accounting firms, logistics, consultants of many different kinds. So tap into it, ncworldtrade.org, and then click on the events tab to find out more about joining on May 1st. Thank you.
Thank you, Blake. We also have a former president of the North Carolina World Trade Association, Kuldeep Wassam with EDPNC. And of course, Blake is the past president of the Triangle chapter. So our NC export team, U.S. Commercial Service, those folks I mentioned before, NC Ag, U.S. Commercial Service, Exim Bank, SBA, SBTDC are all members and would love to network with you. Some of you had mentioned professionals, distribution agreements and things of that nature. You can always find a good attorney in the North Carolina World Trade Association. Melissa, well, let's just open it up. Are there, and I'll let Melissa and Kelly, however they want to do this production-wise, if they want to free open the mics and let people ask questions and queue them up. And as long as Amber and Josha and Gautam are willing to stick around,
Sure. Yeah, I think everyone could just open your mic so we can have a chat. And if perhaps someone even had some lessons learned or situations that they have seen come to fruition through successful determination of what market to go into, etc. So we could just have dialogue about anything. Or you could type in the comments if you have a question or just want us to go a little deeper. You can feel free to type in the comments.
I often find people are speechless after one of these things.
There's so much information. Yeah, all right. Well, our events from our organization at EDPNC are always listed on our website if you go to the events page. Currently, Mike, you could perhaps promote the series of free education that you're offering on international trade finance.
Right. So the SBTDC has partnered with the SBA for 8 years now to offer a free trade finance webinar series. We have every month we deliver a webinar, and I'll put the information, I'll follow up with the attendee list if you like and put the information. If you go to the SBTDC website, sbtdc.org, and if you look under events, you'll see the trade finance webinar series topics. We have things like foreign exchange, letters of credit. We talk about export credit insurance. We talk about methods of payment. We talk about filling requests for quotes and how to do that, commercial invoices, all that good kind of stuff. And we do that on a monthly basis.
It's just wonderful, wonderful resources in the state of North Carolina. We have a great ecosystem. So those of you that did not chime in, thank you for joining us, and make sure to find us and reach out to us if you prefer just one-on-one connection to tap into our resources. We're here for you. And also, feel free to reach out to me. My contact information is in the comments. If you have any requests for either deeper dive on any of these topics or just topics that you have not seen offered from our export coffee talks thus far, we're developing the pipeline, and we want to address things that you are interested in. We're here to serve you, so please provide us with feedback. And have a wonderful weekend. Any other last minute comments before we all head off for our Friday and our weekend?
I'd just like to say thank you to everybody that all the panelists on the call. It's a great conversation, and it's really important for companies that don't really have that export business plan in place to be able to have the knowledge of where to start, where to begin, and what kind of some of the benefits of having one are. So thank you all very much for your knowledge and experience and sharing that with others.
I echo that. Thank you
Yeah.
very much.
Thank you all very much. Thank you, Melissa. Thank you, Amber, Josha, and Gautam.
Thanks
Very
for
nice.
having us.
Yep.